Now, each year we also choose a member of the faculty to make a presentation at our academic convocation. This tradition has been extremely rewarding, and tonight we have a distinguished faculty member who lives on the South 40 with his family, Professor Andrew Rehfeld. Andrew Rehfeld is a professor and director of undergraduate studies in the Department of Political Science in Arts and Sciences. He joined Washington University in 2001 after receiving a master's in public policy and a PhD in political science from the University of Chicago. His primary work explores the nature of political representation and its relationship to justice and democracy. He is the author of several books on this topic and has published many articles on this and other topics related to the history and practice of political theory. At Washington University, Professor Rehfeld teaches classes in the history of political thought, contemporary democratic theory, and ethics and politics. Rehfeld founded and co-directs the research group in political theory, which involves dozens of faculty from arts and sciences, law, and social work, and sponsors the weekly political theory workshop and fall and spring conferences. Andrew Rehfeld also serves as the residential faculty fellow in Liggett Koenig Residential College, where he lives. He lives there with his wife, Miggy Greenberg, who is vice chair of the Department of Psychiatry at St. Louis University's School of Medicine, and with his 14-year-old daughter, Emma, and their 13-year-old son, Hoban. Rehfeld is currently on the editorial board of the Journal of Politics and was elected to the governing board of the Association for Political Theory, an international professional association. He's also been active in various community projects here in St. Louis, including the University City Centennial Commission, as board secretary of the St. Louis Jewish Community Relations Council, and the Flynn Park Elementary School PTO. It's a great pleasure to introduce this year's faculty convocation speaker, Professor Andrew Rehfeld.
Well, thank you, Chancellor Wrighton, for that very generous introduction. As the Chancellor just said, my family and I live in Liggett Koenig Residential College. What he couldn't tell any of you gathered here today is that Liggett Koenig is the best damn residential college on the South 40. Well, I spent a part of my day there today seeing what's going on as our incredibly talented RAs and student staff, under the advice and wisdom of the RCD Jeff Grimm, greeted our new residents and their families as they moved them into their dorms. It was happening everywhere. So much excitement today as college life really begins to take shape. And the excitement and joy was palpable as so many of you prepared to enjoy your freedom for the first time in 18 years. But I did not come here to address the parents in the group today and what this moment means to them. So let me turn now to the class of 2013 and those transfers who have joined our community and begin with a story. The story takes place in March of 2005 at Roger Dean Stadium in Jupiter, Florida, during the St. Louis Cardinals spring training. I was there with my then 9-year-old son, Hoban, at the last of 4 games that we had seen on that visit. Because of our return flight, we had to leave that game early. As the time for our departure approached, I could see Hoban's disappointment, and not so much about leaving the game early, but disappointment that once again no one had hit him a foul ball. He perched on the edge of his seat, his well-worn glove held in the ready, hope against hope that before we had to leave, the batter would hit him the ball. Upon hearing the news that we would have to leave after the very next pitch, Hoban slumped deep down into his seat. I could see him doing his best to hold back his tears. but I just couldn't stand to see my child so disappointed. So I found myself saying to him, but don't worry, Hoban, the next ball pitch, the next one, the last one we can stay for, that ball is going to be yours. Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. My son was rightly skeptical, but with the hope that takes over when reason is clouded by desire, he sat straight up in his chair again, eyes wide open, smacked his glove for good measure, and waited for that ball to come his way. The pitcher released a curveball. The batter took his mark, swung, and the crack of the bat left no doubt he had connected. The ball was fouling back to the third base side, right towards where we were sitting. We saw the ball spinning ferociously towards us. As it approached, we could practically smell it. And as Hoban jumped up to catch it, we watched as it flew right over our heads. Well, before I knew what was happening, Hoban ran to the back of the bleachers and looked down onto the courtyard into which the ball had fallen. I could only see him from behind, waving frantically and yelling, and suddenly he turned around and with a beaming smile held over his head the very ball that I told him would be his. Another patron had thrown it back up to him. Hoban ran back to our seats, and he could not contain his excitement. "Dad, I got the ball! I got the ball!" And then he looked at me in awe, and he said, "How do you know?" How'd you know that was going to happen? Well, of course, I didn't know that was going to happen. It was one of those moments a parent acts in a manifestly reckless way just to bring a temporary moment of hope or relief to a child. Now, most of those moments don't turn out so well, do they? Result in further disappointment and regret. This time it didn't. The prediction came true, but it was only a lucky guess. So given what happened, why is it wrong to say that I didn't know? Why is it wrong, that is to say, that I knew my son would get the ball? Remember, I said what I did with conviction, and what I predicted came true. Why didn't I know? What more is there to knowledge, if not believing true things when you happen upon them? Well, the answer to that question is as old as the ancients. It's that knowledge requires not only true belief, knowledge requires justification for what we believe to be true, even when we believe what we do is true. The reason I did not know that Hoban would get that ball was that I had terrible reasons to believe that he would. I know that at this very moment, though, many of here wish that that were not the case. Many of us here wish that our hopes for our children would protect them from whatever pain and disappointment they will inevitably feel and experience along with their joy during the next 4 years. But unfortunately, that's not the way the world works. And that's why my hope that my son would not be disappointed was not itself a good reason to believe that he would get the ball. Now, this takes me to my central message of my talk this evening. The most important thing that you can begin to learn at college is how to distinguish good reasons from bad ones. And the only way to do that is to commit yourself here and now to living a life of the mind while you're here at Washington University. The life of the mind is something that extends beyond the walls of your classrooms, the tools of the labs, the books you will read, the papers you will write. With any luck, the life of the mind that you will forge in your 4 years here will provide a foundation for you for meaning, sustenance, and fulfillment till the end of your days. Now, it might surprise you that I'd focus on reason-giving in the life of the mind, given that a university's mission is first and foremost to discover and produce and pursue truth, veritas, emet. You see, the problem is that truth is notoriously hard to come by, and even harder to be certain once we've found it. Because of this, the best we can hope for is to be guided towards truth by the quality of reasons we have. That is the mark of a good education, not the number of facts we can all cram into our skulls. The mark of a good education is the quality of reasons we have for believing what we believe. Now, if truth is hard to find, figuring out what are good and bad reasons isn't a heck of a lot easier. As you begin your classes next week, you'll even discover that there are many conflicting views as to what constitute good and bad reasons. You'll find they appear to be slightly different if you're in anthropology, English, or philosophy, let alone in history, religion, or political science. Nor are the natural sciences immune from conflicts about what constitutes good reasons. Yes, scientific method itself is designed to give you good reasons for believing its conclusions to be true, but it's not decisive in every case. Indeed, the great scientific revolutions were themselves brought on by disagreements about what constituted good reasons for overturning old beliefs. Did Darwin's finches provide a reason for believing natural selection was the engine of evolution or not? That was the question. Should Einstein's theories alter our views about the nature of Newtonian physics or not? Those are the questions. These and many others were disagreements about what constituted good reasons to believe. Now, I wish I could give you a little pocket guide, an iPhone app, to tell you when you found a good reason and a bad one. I can't. But bucking Danny's suggestion not to give you advice right now, I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to give you just a few suggestions on how to begin that struggle yourself. And at the heart of it is that you ought to create a life of the mind for yourselves while you're here at Washington University. First, you're living, as you've been told, with over 1,500 incredibly smart, interesting, engaging first-year students who come from a wondrous assortment of places, traditions, religions, family situations, races, sexual orientations, and cultures. Engage them. Not superficially, but substantively, about the ideas that matter to you and to them, about the commitments they endorse and why they endorse them. But when you do engage with others, let me caution you about something not to do. Do not make the narcissistic blunder of thinking your ideas are interesting and valuable simply because you have them. They are not. Pride of ownership may be a good thing to have when you own a car or a house, but it's detrimental where ideas are concerned. As I tell my students before their first paper assignments are due, don't tell me what you believe. I don't care. I mean it. I really don't care what they believe. I don't care that they think minorities should or should not get to elect their own representatives. I don't care whether or not they agree or disagree with Plato about justice. And I'm not being coy or posing or simply being provocative for the sake of provocation. I really don't care that my students believe these things. What I do care about, what I care deeply and passionately about, is the reasons they have for the beliefs that they hold. For only when you stop loving your own ideas because they are your own, and turn and consider the quality of reasons you have for endorsing what you do, only then do you begin to take yourselves and your ideas seriously. And only then do you take the first steps in building with others a life of the mind. My second suggestion to you is a corollary of the first. Just as you should not value your own views simply because they are yours, don't value other people's views simply because they happen to have them. Take their ideas seriously, learn what reasons they have for believing and practicing what they do, and allow the full force of those reasons to challenge your own beliefs and practices. The best way to do that is to sincerely step into their own shoes when you stumble upon a disagreement. I'll give you an example. I know that many of you here, just from past experience, are pro-choice and believe that a woman ought to have the right to choose an abortion, to have an abortion. And in light of what I just said, some of you don't just believe that, you have reasons for why you believe that. But when you encounter others in this room who don't believe a woman has such a right, step into their shoes. Imagine, as many, if not most, pro-life supporters do, that zygote and fetus really have the same human status as any one of us here tonight. And now proceed with your argument. Does a woman really have a right to choose even if a human life is terminated by that choice? Well, maybe, but it's a little more difficult, isn't it? And if you're on the other side of that argument, take your pro-choice peers seriously. There is no consensus that humanness begins at any time before birth, and certainly not before the third trimester of pregnancy. Given that lack of consensus, if you wish to make abortion illegal, You'll need to explain to that other person what right the state has to impose its force upon women who do not share your view about the humanness of a fetus. When you each step into the other's shoes and take the other side seriously, only then do you take your first steps into building with others a life of the mind, where ideas take center stage and reasons are given their due. Now, to help you do this, let me share with you the most important thing I learned in college. Claims about the world are either true or false. They cannot be both. Now, I know this goes against a persistent view that many of you have. It goes like this: if you believe it's true for you. So let's step into those shoes and take that view seriously. And let's do so by way of another very serious example. I know many people here tonight believe that Mary, mother of Jesus, was a virgin when Jesus was born. And many of them have considered reasons for believing it, honed from a good deal of reflection, their own experience with the divine, and their commitment to religious authorities in their own lives. And I also know many people here tonight do not share that view. Now, whichever side you find yourself on, we do know one thing for certain. Either Mary was a virgin when Jesus was born, or she wasn't. She couldn't have been both. That means, of course, that one of you is mistaken, and that's okay. We certainly won't resolve that issue tonight, will we? I want to suggest to you, though, that you not avoid this kind of conflict by simply asserting beliefs about the world can be true just because we happen to believe them. When you say to each other, if you believe it's true for you, you shut down conversation and trivialize each other's reasons for believing what they do. Indeed, the claim, if you believe it's true for you, doesn't even take yourself or your own ideas seriously. Consider the case we've just been discussing. Does anyone here really believe that virginity is dependent on what we believe about it? Do I have the power to become a virgin again simply by believing I am? Will your friend become a virgin if we all believe it of her? Holy cow. That's not what I learned in health class. Now, I suppose I could have chosen some anodyne examples than the ones that I just did, right? I mean, one's not supposed to discuss religion and politics, let alone abortion and virginity in polite company, to say nothing of the 4,200 people gathered here today. I suppose we might have discussed whether Bayesian statistics are the right kind to use to understand certain features of the political world, or whether Mona Lisa really is a good piece of art. But to do that would have missed the last very important suggestion I want to make to you. Creating a life of the mind is not easy and will often entail great discomfort. And surely disagreeing about ideas must never be an excuse for hatred or prejudice. These are intellectual virtues I'm speaking of. The political and communal virtues of toleration must always be respected, even and most importantly, when views of those we tolerate are repugnant to us. The faculty and residential staff is committed to creating safe environments for just this kind of exploration. We are committed to creating a community of intellectual fellowship. But the safe community that we create is meant to enable you to do the hard work, and yes, often deeply disquieting work that comes from giving reasons their due. Living a life of the mind requires. You see, you don't wear a helmet to take a bath. You wear protective gear when you know there's danger ahead. Well, we don't create safety zones so you can disengage from each other and take mental baths. We create safety zones so you can step up and do the hard and uncomfortable work that's the life of the mind requires. And you'll have a chance to put this to the test yourself this Monday as you gather to discuss the freshman reading book, When the Emperor Was Divine. As the class of 2013 knows, the book tells the poignant account of the human costs borne by innocent Japanese Americans interned by our government during World War II. Is it not this Monday? Now, the first thing you should do is actually come prepared on Monday to discuss the book. When you gather, don't settle for easy questions. Questions like, was the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II a violation of their human rights? Did it cause them terrible suffering? Well, of course it was, and of course it did. They were innocently subjected to force, in some cases bodily harmed, and their property damaged, stolen, or destroyed. That question is as easy to answer as their pain and suffering is difficult to read about. The hard question that you might turn to instead is this: was that policy justified, or was it merely an overreaction based on fear? Was it a good one that protected those who were interned from prejudice from their neighbors? Was it a good one that protected those who were interned from the prejudice of their neighbors and the nation itself from harm? More generally, does political action sometimes require that our hands get dirty, that sometimes we need to do bad to achieve a greater good? I don't know what the answers are to those questions, but I am certain that those are the kinds of hard questions that are worth struggling with. Now, before I conclude my remarks tonight, I should remind us that over the next 4 years, you will be doing other things than giving reasons their due. You'll be playing, you'll be building relationships, you'll be loving, you'll be learning, and you'll be figuring out how to manage your freedom that will be as new to you as it will be to your parents once they go from here. And that is really a good thing, because if you stop to consider whatever you had good reasons, if you stop to consider whether you had good reasons for everything you did, you would literally never get up out of bed in the morning. And if you took it upon yourselves to question every person's reasons for the beliefs they had, you'll find rather quickly no one will talk to you. As both my colleague, Professor Ian McMullen, and my student, Greg Allen, of the class of 2010, suggested I remind you when I was discussing this with them yesterday, there is a time for supporting a friend in need, a time for doing what your professor requires, as asinine as that assignment will be, a time for just listening to each other, a time for kicking back and watching Tina Fey on 30 Rock. Best enjoyed in the company of the talented RAs, students, staff, and residents of Liggett Koenig Residential Hall. But you see, you don't need me to tell you to do those things. You have a pretty good handle on how to do well in school and have fun. I focused on what it will take for you to create an environment in which engagement about reasons and ideas takes center stage in your life, becomes a foundation for a critical engagement with the world for the rest of your lives, because I believe that is the one distinctive opportunity that's afforded to you by coming to college for 4 years, no matter what else you do and no matter what else you enjoy here at school. So it is well time for me to end. In a moment, those who are gathered literally around us, those who brought you here and helped settle you into your rooms, those who gave of themselves, and yes, in all seriousness, gave up some of their own freedom so that you would have the opportunity to be here tonight, all those around us will begin to take their leave. As they do, they will create a space for you to find your still small voices, a space in which to find your footing and yourselves. They will have the very hard job of staying away, and as has been said before, keeping their distance, so that the space for you to grow remains intact and open for you to expand. You cannot possibly imagine how difficult it will be for many of them to do just that. But hard as it is, that will be their task and one that they must take on. As for the class of 2013 and all the incoming students, well, I think back to Roger Dean Stadium 4 years ago. No, I didn't know my son would get that next ball, and my words certainly didn't make that happen. You see, what really happened is that Hoban transformed that opportunity. He stepped into that space that had been created for him. He did what he had to do to get that ball. Well, your loved ones here can only leave to create the space open for you to grow. It's up to you to step into it. I have great faith in your capacities to create a community that's supporting and challenging and forces you to think hard about the most important commitments of your life. But you must do that work yourselves. Give ideas their due. take yourselves and your peers seriously. That is my hope. This is your time, and the stakes could not be higher. On behalf of the faculty of Washington University in St. Louis, I welcome you to the start of that journey.